Sorry about that. I forgot to record before. Go ahead, sorry.
I also create content for developers, so content like how to get started in tech, how to land a job, interview tips for developers, and generally also share content about front-end development. So in case you have any question around these areas, I am very happy to answer them. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So our first question is, what do most beginners and entry-level developers struggle with in their first years in the industry?
What do most beginners and entry-level developers struggle with in the first years in the industry? I would answer this specifically based off my own experience when I started in tech. For a lot of developers, when you're starting off, the number one thing that could be a blocker for them or they could struggle with is, I would say, consistency. And I say this because for me, when I started off, I was a student. So I was basically a CS student and I was trying to learn how to, code to get a job after my degree, right? And the first few months of doing this, I wasn't consistent because I had to juggle a lot of things, school, work, internship then, and learning. So for me, at that point in my career, it was trying to be consistent with, learning, because as a beginner in tech, if you're trying to be a developer, you have to consistently build your skills to be able to be employable. So one thing I feel a lot of beginners might be struggling with, as I did, is staying consistent with learning or leveling up in a specific technology or area. I would say another thing that I've also seen a lot of people struggle with is knowing where to focus on. So of course, tech is like a lot. There are different fields in tech for you to choose to start your career from. But at the beginning stage, you might be confused on what to focus on. So like personally, I started as a backend developer and I ended up being a front-end developer. And that happened because I was not sure which field I would like to, delve into and settle in. But later I discovered what I really loved doing and I decided to just focus on that. So for a lot of beginners, they struggle with, from my experience, consistency and figuring out where exactly in the tech field you want to position yourself in. So I hope that answers your question.
That was a great answer. Thank you very much. Our next question is, what made you want to become an advocate for building open source software?
Oh, interesting question. I have a nice story to tell about this, and it's also related to how I started in tech, how I started my career. So at the time, this was 2017, I was hearing a lot about, oh, you have to learn GitHub, you have to know how to use GitHub. And I was kind of curious to learn. And I remember then I had a friend that was into open source. So he created a lot of libraries. Back then, I mentioned I was learning PHP. I was trying to be a backend developer, and he had a lot of libraries in PHP. And I felt, oh, it would be nice for me to try to put myself into the open source world by learning from his libraries, even though at the time I felt like I did not know a lot of things that he was building, but I decided to see how I could contribute to that. And I remember my first PR ever was to his project, his open source project. And one thing that I liked from the experience was I felt I was part of something bigger than myself, because he had a library that had over, I think, 1,000 stars. And that's not a metric for me, but I feel like the library at the time that I contributed to was used like by a lot of Laravel developers, and I made a change to that and it felt so good. And that was how I kickstarted my whole journey into the open source space. So ever since then, I kept contributing to other projects that I am involved in right now, a project that I use for my day-to-day job, technologies that I'm interested in. I just see if I can actually give back or just contribute back, because of course they are building this thing for free and it would be nice to see how I can contribute. So that's how I started in open source, and yeah, it's been going so well. I've also made my own projects that are open source as well. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's see. The next one is, what's the most common mistake interviewers come across that don't land them a job?
Interviewers, okay. I think one thing that I'm not I'm not a recruiter, so I can't really tell from the recruiter's perspective, but I can tell from myself applying to jobs. Something that I've seen a lot of people do that they should do, right, is trying to impress, I would say impress the recruiter or the company you're applying to by not just sending out your CV, because if you think about it, if you're trying to apply to a job, maybe 50 other developers are also going to apply to that job and everybody's sending their resume. So how do you stand out? So thinking about how am I going to stand out for this role that I'm applying to? So I've seen that a lot of people, when they want to, especially when they're trying to get your first tech job, they apply to a lot, which is good. There is no problem in applying to a lot, but my advice would be, or a common mistake that I've seen is people apply to several different jobs without specifically thinking about how they stand out for that job. And what I mean is just sending resumes and CV to, like, in a day, 20 different jobs without specifically targeting the job description for the company that you're applying to. So how can you fix this, or how can you make this better for yourself? What I do is I also try to write a cover letter, which is something that's, I mean, a lot of job applications will put it there as optional, but you should always try to send one, because the cover letter that you send is, I feel like, is just an avenue for you as an applicant to sell yourself to the company. So if you can do that, like, even though you have a very good resume, putting it in the cover letter, how much you really want the job and what you offer, what you can offer to the company. I bet you people that only sent resumes and you sent a resume and a very good cover letter, you already stand a chance of getting that job. So that's something I can recommend. Yeah.
That was a very useful answer. Thank you very much. Just before I forget, sorry for the interruption, but I forgot to say this earlier at the start of our talk, but if you guys haven't seen the Slack announcement that Tyler made yet, we are doing a raffle to increase participation with these workshops. So check out more information on that in the announcements channel on Slack, and make sure to earn the entries to the raffle by doing questions. Make sure that you do them without the anonymous tag so that we can see your name and link it with the person who actually asked the question. Okay, sorry for the interruption.
Yes.
So for our next one, Brenda was wondering, what will the coding interview be like for a front-end developer, like portfolio, technical interviews, and more?
Yeah, sure, I could answer this. I think this differs from company to company if you're applying to, but from my own experience, I've seen that the flow typically starts from you apply to the job, the role, and then you get a message back that they want to start interviewing you. So the steps goes from you have an initial chat, so with the recruiter or with the person in charge of the job, the person you speak to, so the company, you have the initial chat first. Then after that, typically is either they schedule another chat for you to have a coding, test, or they send you a coding assessment to do. Some people would send you a coding assessment to do and submit later. Some would have you do it on the call. Other people will send you algorithm questions to, solve, and then send it back to them at a specific time. So it's during the second, after the initial chat, the second step is not definite because it varies from company to company. But after you go through that and you're satisfied with the submission you send, then it goes on to you talking to one of the developers, or if they have like an engineering manager, you have a conversation with them just to assess your skills, your skill level. And then sometimes they could ask you to walk through your submission depending on what they want. But this part of the chat is basically trying to learn from you what your background and technical skills and abilities are. Then typically, if you scale through this stage, then I think the last stage, it's usually 4 to 5 stages. The last stage is when you get to talk to either people about soft skills, how you're a good fit for the role. And then after this, if it goes well, then you get an offer. So that's how it goes. Yeah. But it varies from company to company. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see. Is it easy for software developers to shift into other fields in the later part of their career, such as finance and business management?
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say yes, because I've seen people, I personally have not done it, but I've seen people do this and it's very possible. And the reason why I say this is because tech is tech is literally a career that you can apply to any field. So you can be a software developer and later transition to being a finance manager in a tech company or in a financial company. I don't know, that's related to tech. So bringing your previous experience as a developer to somewhere else is very applicable. Maybe the only part that I won't say this is applicable is maybe you will go from software engineer to being a doctor. It doesn't work that way. So, but definitely you can always transition. I've seen a lot of developers transition to other roles that are still kind of in the tech area, but not software development. So it's possible.
Great, thank you. Um, what kind of side projects would you suggest that we could do to gain experience in web development or development in general?
Okay. Sure, I could actually look for a very good resource for you, but I know that there are a lot of resources online that has like 100 list of ideas for side projects, for front-end development, for back-end development. I mean, I could mention a few that I know, like maybe um, using a public API to build a front-end dashboard consuming the API. That could be nice for you to do. But like I mentioned, this resource has, I could search for it and share the link if that would be helpful. But they have like 100 list of ideas. And I've seen one that actually has the ideas, including user stories for the apps that you, or the website. So that's also very nice. We'll just search for it while I'm talking and send to you. Yeah. Okay. Think type as there's this. Okay, I sent you two links. I hope that's helpful. But you can check on, you can just search on Google ideas for side project. I'm sure you find a lot of them. Hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Was it difficult to make that transition from backend to front end once you decided that was your interest? Thank you for the links, by the way.
Yeah, sure. I would say I it wasn't difficult because I wasn't already too deep into the backend career path. Like I mentioned, this was the point where I was trying to decide what should I do, and I started with backend. I think for about 6 months, and then eventually I thought it would be nice to learn JavaScript, and that's how I switched to JavaScript. So it wasn't like I was already working for years as a backend developer before I switched. So yeah, it wasn't difficult.
Great, thank you. What's the main thing that comp sci students struggle with that you've seen in your experience?
Okay, as a computer science student, one time, this might you might relate to this or you might not, but from my experience, um, what I struggled with is the fact that I was studying computer science, but a lot of the things that was being taught was not applicable to real life scenarios. So I remember I did Fortran as a course in my second level, but you would never have to use Fortran in real life, right? Because it's like outdated. So I know that now there are a lot of updated, curriculums in the computer science universities, computer science degrees that you take in universities. So I think if that's the case for you, then that's good. But during my time, my 4 years in school, it was towards the last year that I had introduction to web development, and that was what actually piqued my interest to decide to be a developer. So imagine I stayed in school for almost 4 years, and it was still the fourth year that I had the opportunity to actually do something that I enjoyed using. So and it actually took a lot of my personal efforts to, outside of school, go and learn a lot of these things, because they teach you, of course, they teach you the basics. They go almost to like the intermediate level. I don't know if that's the case for your school, but they won't teach you literally every single thing. So you still have to go on to learn on your own. So I think just having it in mind that you won't learn everything you need to land a job as a developer in your degree. So putting in time outside to learn more would be very beneficial for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How do you deal with imposter syndrome regarding your skills in a career of tech or CS?
How do I answer this question? Okay, I think imposter syndrome is something that a lot of people struggle with, including myself. Regardless of how much that I think I have done, I still feel like a fraud sometimes. And how do I deal with it? Currently, I try to look at the brighter side, so see how much progress that I've made from where I started, and just so I keep track of a lot of my progress. So if I, for instance, start a new job, I have it in a journal or I document it somewhere just to look back and see when I'm feeling like an imposter, this is what I've done and I feel proud of myself. So it really helps to keep like a journal to always remind yourself that you are okay, that there is no, like, you don't need to think about yourself as being an imposter when you know that you're already doing well for yourself. So to answer that question, how do I deal with imposter syndrome? It happens to me a lot, but I try to look at the positive side of things. Yeah.
Thank you very much. What are the technologies you're involved in that help make the internet more accessible, like the open source projects that you mentioned earlier?
Um, okay. So I work as a front-end developer, and how does this relate to making the web accessible? So a lot of the things that I build are front-end facing, meaning that these are things that tools or sites that people would interact with. So as much as possible, I not only try to make sure the apps that I'm building is accessible, but I'm also an advocate for that. So how do I mean? I try to teach people about how to make your website accessible, because as a front-end developer, when I learned about accessibility, I never knew it was important, because at the time it wasn't something a lot of people were talking about. And I felt like, oh, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, that's all I need to know. And I feel I could do better by telling other people, advocating for this, not just doing it on my own, but trying to teach other developers how to build more accessible website. And I've done this through blogs that I've written and videos that I've made on my channel. So yeah, that's how.
Thank you so much. Um, Due to the competitive nature of careers in computer science, what steps can we take to creating an appealing application, which I think relates more to the standing out, like you said earlier?
Uh, okay. So if you are, does this then mean that you are a student trying to apply for a job? Because you mentioned computer science, I just want to know.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what they meant because like probably from university into a job in computer science.
Okay. How can you create an appealing application? I would say, uh, as much as possible, try to have, you know, projects, side projects or personal projects that you've done that shows at least to a level the skills that you have in your application. So if you're applying for a front-end developer role and they're asking you to have at least, I don't pay attention to the years specifically, but if I know that I can at least work with a technology or learn it, then I'm okay and I apply for the role. So if you find that there is a job you like to apply to and you're asking for at least say 1 or 2 years of experience using React or Vue and you feel that you're capable, then you should apply for that role. But don't just apply for the role. Also try to beef up your portfolio. So if possible, you have built some applications on your own using these technologies that the job requires, then it would be nice to also outline them in your resume or something that I've seen that is very helpful. And I think a couple of recruiters have told me that this is nice that you have it. It's putting your GitHub portfolio in your resume and linking to it, because that just goes that goes that makes it easier for the recruiters to see what you've done, especially if you've been, like I said, you've been creating projects on your own and you post them, you publish them to GitHub. It's also nice to have a portfolio where you have like the things that you've done. It would be nice to also have uh, this linked in the resume, like I mentioned. So a GitHub portfolio is really helpful. And if you have a portfolio or if you don't have one, maybe investing in building one and then putting that as a side project is also a nice thing to do. Yeah.
Thank you. Our next one is how do you motivate yourself when you feel like nothing is working when coding at a job? And I feel like everyone has this issue. So yeah,
Okay. How do I motivate myself? Okay. For me, it could be two things. It could be, what am I getting out of the job that I'm doing? Is the work that I'm doing, is it giving me joy? Am I happy doing the job? Right? If I feel that is I'm just having that feeling of, oh, I don't feel like this development job is for me. It could be that I'm facing a challenge in a problem that I'm trying to solve, and I start thinking that, oh, I don't think this is for me. What I do in that situation is just try to look back at where I was and where I am right. So you would know, because as you grow in your career as a developer, you would notice that sometimes the things that you feel like 6 months ago you have no idea about, you already know them, even though you've not mastered them, but at least you were not where you were 6 months ago. So I like to think about that situation when I feel unmotivated at a job that I'm doing. It could be for reasons that I don't feel very comfortable with, for instance, the technologies we're using. And I'm telling myself that I can't do this, but just trying to think back to see, I've faced this kind of challenge before and I was able to overcome it. So I can also do this. The second thing for me is um, thinking about what the end goal of your, like for me specifically, I have like a career goal. Where do I want to be in a certain amount of years? I try to look at the goals that I have in front of me and see that, okay, I need to meet these goals. In order for me to do this, then I have to be focused and do this work, right? There are days, I'm not saying that there is going to be, flawless, like every single day you're going to be very happy at your job. Some days you'd feel like just taking your laptop and, throwing it on the floor because of course you have those kind of days, but trying to basically think about what your end goal is really helps to keep you staying motivated.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's see. What are some universities and places you recommend for tech entrepreneurship, and to what extent do you think the region matters in this field?
I am not sure I have the perfect answer for this question because I mean I don't know a lot of university, especially I don't know where you are located to answer this question. But what I could say is I know that a lot of university has programs on tech entrepreneurship. And what I would suggest you do is just go on platforms like platforms that have, you know, programs for university or master's program. I don't know if that's what you want, but just checking out the universities in your area that offer this. And what do I think about the region of tech entrepreneurship? Also don't have a lot of um, opinion to give here, but definitely I would say if you're interested in going into this, it would be nice to first look at the universities in your area that offer this program. And also something else you could do is try to look for people that are already in these areas. You could find them on LinkedIn, you could find them on Twitter, and maybe sending them a message to just share their opinion because they have more experience than I do would be very nice.
Thank you. Um, our next one is, what do companies want from CS students? For example, high GPA, clubs, side projects, data structures, algorithms. Yeah,
Okay. Um, I think how I would answer this question is if you're trying to apply to a company for a job, they're asking for something, which is what skills, technical skills do you have, and does it match the role that you're applying to? Definitely, all of these that you mentioned are definitely going to help. High GPA, of course, clubs, especially if they're related to, programming, side project, definitely data structure. So I think you basically answered the question. Companies are looking for developers that are passionate, that are very interested in, learning, not just learning, but building next level, you know, tools or websites, depending on the company you decide to work with. So if you show all of these things that you mentioned, then I think they'll see you as a great fit for the role. Yeah.
thank you. Um, so our next one is, do you think you will stay working as a front-end engineer or try something new in the future, like you had switched before from back-end engineering to front-end? Um, yeah.
Yeah.
And also an add-on question to that would be, do you think front-end engineering is going to be prevalent in the future as a major career field?
Okay. I'll answer the first one. I still see myself being a front end developer for like a long time because I really enjoy doing it. Regardless of that, I am very aware of the fact that there are now a lot of other areas in tech that I'm interested in. And I don't know, have not made a decision yet, but I could give you an example. Like for instance, I am a front-end developer, but on the side, I am also a technical content creator. So, and there are a lot of jobs that are available in this other niche that I mentioned, even though I don't do it professionally, but I spend a lot of my time doing it. And in the future, if I find an opportunity that offers me a full-time job to do that, then definitely I'm going to take it. But still, it's still in the same area, right? I create content for developers. It's still me working with front-end development, regardless, just a different role, right? So I still see myself doing it for a long time. And the second question, yeah, is front-end still going to be relevant in the future? Definitely, because I don't see anytime soon, even though a lot of people are talking about it, AI taking over our jobs. As a front-end developer, you, regardless of if you're starting now, you've been a front-end developer for a couple of years, definitely you still have relevant skills. The only thing that I see changing is the, how do I explain it? The only thing that I see changing is the web. So if you've noticed, or if you just looked back from say 5 years ago, how things has progressed from that then to now, there are a lot of new technologies that are coming up. Not just that, a lot of existing technologies keeps shipping new updates. And as a front-end developer, if you want to stay on, your game, it's, I would advise you should always be learning. So for instance, there is React 18 now. I think 4 years ago, there was React 16. So if you decide that you want to be a front-end developer, regardless if you want to be a developer, because this also happens in other fields where technology keeps advancing, you have to be ready to always, follow through with technologies that you use. Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. We have a couple more questions, but we're running out of time. Let's see. Is there anything that you'd like to answer out of these?
Yeah, I could answer this one about, do you think doing a bootcamp is a good way of getting into the industry? Yes, I think so. Well, people might have different opinions, but I think it is, if you can afford it, right? I know a lot of people that started their careers from, attending boot camps, graduating, and then getting their first tech job. I think if you also, I remember a question in the beginning about how people struggle as beginners in their, learning. If you find that you're in that situation where you're trying to learn on your own as a self-learner, but you're still struggling, and you want to have not a self-directed, but you want to be part of like a group of people that are also in the same area as you, then a bootcamp could be the perfect solution to that. Because I- I've I've seen a lot of boot camps that have like very standard curriculums for, beginners trying to get into tech. And because you have a support system, basically, you have people that are also in the same space as you are. You have a community. So bootcamp could be the best option for you if that's the case. So definitely bootcamp is a great way of getting into tech.
Thank you. Um, this one's from Sarah. Do you think it is beneficial to become a full stack developer or focus on either front or back end?
Um, I would answer this, but definitely I would say this is your personal decision to make. Don't let anybody, because I mean, you're the one going to be writing front end, back end, full stack. Don't let anybody tell you to do front end, not do front end, do full stack. What I would say to answer this question is, if you find that you're very interested in front end development, then go for it. If you find that you love both, you enjoy doing back end and you enjoy doing front end, then definitely go for it. What I see is there are a lot of benefits in all of these fields. So if you decide that I want to just stick to front end, write front end code, then you're still a developer. Like I would say that it's okay to choose whatever route you want to go with, as long as you are very comfortable with doing it. Don't make people, or don't make how do I explain this? Don't let anybody tell you that you have to be a full stack developer to find a job, because that's not the truth. So definitely it's based on your interests, what you want to do, and what you want to eventually become as a tech person. Yeah.
That was a great answer. Thank you very much. Um, there's one that's more personal to you and your career. What were some of your favorite projects to work on? Are there any that you are particularly enjoying right now?
Yeah, sure. My favorite projects that I worked on, I could start from one that I started with when I was learning JavaScript. I don't know if you are familiar with this challenge. It's called the 100 Days of Code Challenge. And I did it, I think, 3 years ago when I was learning JavaScript. During this period, so it's a period of 3 months, and I know even now that all of those projects, of course, they are outdated, but those were the best times of my life because I could choose literally anything I wanted to do. And during that period, I decided that I wanted to upskill in JavaScript, front end generally, and I built a lot of projects in that period. And I also documented my journey. I remember that I had a weekly blog post that I would write on what I learned for that week, the things that I'm building. And that was what helped me to land a job after, because after I finished the challenge, I got an offer. So yeah, those were projects that I did. Right now, I'm working on several different projects that I'm very excited about. Some are on definitely front-end development, some are on content creation. I also contribute to some open source projects. I help them with documentation. So I really like I mentioned, I really like um, contributing to developer education, even if it's, for me, I feel when I started learning, I learned a lot from other people that were sharing. So for me, it's also a way of also doing the same. So giving back to the community that helped me. So I create content. I also help some open source projects, one of which is Ruby Gems, write their monthly newsletter and also their monthly updates for the blog. So that's something I've been working for almost 2 years now, and I'm very excited to continue doing that. Apart from that, I have a lot of project that I'm looking forward to, starting in the nearest future, in the next few months, obviously. But yeah, those are things I could talk about.
Thank you. Let's see, this one should be a relatively short one. I'm very sorry we're going over your time.
Fine.
Um, do you have any more time, or would you like to end the session?
I could do 10 minutes more. So that's fine.
Great, thank you. Okay. Should we ask friends for job referrals for software engineering jobs? So maybe like the importance of networking and connections.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you have this opportunity to ask your friends, definitely, I think that's an area a lot of people don't think about when it comes to networking. It could be that, I mean, you network with, if you have a circle of friends that already have a career in tech, is, I think the easiest way for you to get connected to finding a job is through them, because they're already experienced in this field. They already have gone through the process of finding a job, or they might be working in companies that actually have openings, and it could be just you asking them and then they refer you to get a job. Personally, for me, I am I'm all about putting yourself out there as a developer, networking, not just networking on, social media, for instance, LinkedIn. You could also be active on Twitter. You could also go to meetups. I know now there's COVID, but there are also online communities that you could join if you're interested. And I've been doing this for like, I started putting myself out there. It's like being open to meeting or finding friends in my, you know, community or area of specialization. And I've gotten a lot of job referrals, and I've also helped a lot of people get jobs because of this, connections that I've built from this. So definitely definitely okay to ask your friends for referrals, even if they are not your friends. If you, for instance, are following somebody and they post that their company is hiring, feel free to reach out to them. And I'm sure something might click from just making that first connection.
Thank you. Yeah, I think networking is very important in all fields of technology.
Yeah.
Um, how do you navigate some interesting open source projects? Maybe like how do you get into it? How do you contribute more to it, like you had talked earlier?
Yeah, sure. I could I could say that for me, how I get interested in a project is if I use it. An example I could give, it's Vue, because I am a Vue.js developer and I use it a lot. And how do I navigate open source project? I first think about projects that I'm interested in, right? Something else that I've seen that helps a lot is being an active viewer or an active, not basically contributor, but just being like, if you go on GitHub, you find the project you like, you can start it. That's just one step to getting closer to the project. Then another thing is you can also watch it. So when you watch a project, you get emails, updates on what conversations that are happening, issues that happen about the project. Another thing that I do on how to, get into a project that I'm interested in is just reading the code. And I figure that this helps you a lot as a developer, because if you're working with a technology or a tool every day, or you use it regularly, it really helps for you to know what's behind or what's under the hood. Even though sometimes you might read it and not understand what's happening, right? It still helps for you to have a bit of context on how it works. So I've done this with technologies like that I use, like Vue and Noxt. And how I started was doing all these things that I've mentioned. I also saw a good opportunity to start contributing when I noticed that, for instance, I could find that in the documentation, there is an area that was not covered. Even if it's not me contributing back, just pointing it out to the contributors that, oh, it would be nice to have this covered, like creating an issue. Or if I find that I fixed a bug that I was having, I go to the Git, I go to the GitHub issue, complain about it. But if I fixed it myself, I put down the answer there. And I think for a lot of developers, if you are having a problem, if you don't go to Stack Overflow, then you are in the GitHub issue, because that's literally second Stack Overflow. That's what I call it. But um, so to answer your question, navigating an open source project, the first step is to find a project that you're interested in, right? If you are not interested in the project, I don't think you have the time, right, to do all these things that I've mentioned. So if you really like a project, you can do all of these steps and see how you can work yourself into contributing to it. It could just be you creating an issue, complaining about something you found. It could be that you reply to somebody's question. Like, these are small things, not necessarily you just jumping into the code, into the open source project and creating a feature or creating a version 2 of it. No, you don't need to do that. You have smaller steps that you could make to get to that, step where you see yourself as a contributor to the project.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Um, let's see, I think this will be our last one because
Okay.
we're running out of time. How do you work well with the developer team after all of that time you spent developing by yourself and being an individual developer?
So you're asking from a perspective of working as a, say, freelancer for a while and then switching to working with a team. I could answer this, but this was never the case for me. I've always worked with teams, but if this is the case, I see that there are a lot of resources out there that helps you just learn about integrating with a team. So it could be you learning more about how to communicate better, which is because communication is like key when working with a team, especially if you're working with a team that is remote. It also really helps to learn how to communicate, how to share and receive feedback. is also another important part of working with a team, because you daily you have, initially you were working on your own, where if you had a problem, you figure it out yourself, you don't talk to anybody. But you're moving from that to working with a team where you have, for instance, a project manager which you have to report to, you have a teammates which you have to report to every day. If you don't find a balance to transition from where you were initially to now by just learning about communication, asking and receiving feedback, there are a lot of other soft skills, but generally I feel what would help you in this area is, boosting your soft skills, or basically learning a lot about how to work with other people, because you were not doing that. So it would be very good to learn a lot about these areas: communication, receiving and giving feedback. There are lots, but those are the two that just keep sticking in my head. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that was very helpful, and all those skills are extremely important in a career in technology and CS.
Yeah.
I think, unless you'd like to answer this last one about college, I think that's the time we have.
Okay. Thinking about whether I should go to college or not. Would you recommend going, or would you say that it's better? I think this is a personal decision to make, but I would give you reasons why I think it's okay if you decide not to go to college. Like, I think college is great, right? But it's not a it's not a compulsory criteria for you to have to get a job in tech, right? So more companies are looking for developers, of course, but they are not going to ask you to submit your degree. They are only after your skills, your technical skills. So if you feel like you can do without college and be a good developer, like learn all the skills you require to get you a job and work well with um, those technologies that we learned, then I think it's totally okay. I know developers that don't have college degrees, and they are doing very well at their current jobs. So if you feel like that's a blocker for you, like thinking about, I need to go to college before I start learning how to code, then I'll definitely say don't let that be the case, because you can actually learn to code without actually going to college. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Gift, for talking with us and spending your time. We really appreciate it on behalf of everyone at Labs. Um, to the participants, when you close this meeting, Zoom feedback link will open. It'll be a CodeDay link in your default browser. And if you put your email there and give some feedback, you'll be entered into the raffle that we talked about earlier. So be sure to do that if you want to. And thank you so much again, Gift. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you,
Of
everyone.
course, thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. There goes.